ChandaElaine Spurlock. I'm the head of editing for Manuscripts LLC. You might better know us as Creator Institute, Book Creators, or New Degree Press. And I hope that you're having a wonderful day today. Today I'm going to be taking you very quickly through the 8-week revision checklist. Now, I know that there's a lot going on. You're seeing a lot of things on your screen right now. And first of all, I'd like to point out that just like the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the big friendly letters right at the top that say "Don't panic." I'm going to walk you through this. It will be quick, but hopefully it will give you a very good idea of what we're looking at, what we're hoping to accomplish, and what we think that you can accomplish as a revisions editor with Creator Institute and New Degree Press as you work through this revisions plan with your authors. And part of the reason you're seeing quite so much up on the screen is that here on the far left of the screen, you'll see the revisions checklist ends with the words writer's name. I'm going to show you the difference between the writer's version of this checklist, while at the same time showing you the differences between the editor's version of the same fiction, creative, nonfiction checklist, as well as the differences on the editor's version of the nonfiction checklist. I know it seems like a lot, but I think that we can do this. I know that with the screen being this crowded, that you might not be able to read everything on the screen clearly. So please feel free to open up one or more copies of the same checklist on your screen so you can go through them together with me as I progress through the video. So, all right, let's do the thing, shall we? All right, so first, revisions checklist, fiction, creative, nonfiction, writer's name. You'll notice right away as you're looking at this that they are very different from the editor's checklist. And that is because each week we have like the responsibilities for the editor for that week of edits, what you should come to the meeting with, suggestions, and things to avoid. And before anybody jumps to the conclusion that these things are there because we think you're out there doing bad things, we don't. We are well aware that the stories that the authors sometimes tell us versus what actually happened don't necessarily match in the best way. So all we're doing is providing some additional guidelines along with the additional training that you receive with Creator Institute and New Degree Press to make sure that you're really doing the best that you can for the author. We know things come up, and we know that the authors may say, "My reviewer took over my book," and we may go and look and find out that you have in no way taken over their book and are rewriting it for them. That happens. When those things happen, rather than panicking, you need to reach out to your wrangler, to Christy Carter, to myself, ChandaElaine Spurlock, head of editing, Sherman Morrison, Michael Bailey, or Jordan Waterwash. Any person on any part of that team will be able to help and answer your questions as quickly as possible and hopefully get you back on the road to having a good relationship with your author and having any misunderstandings straightened out. So let's look here. You'll notice that is not the only difference. Now, these are live checklists, so if you have one of these saved on the file for every author, or if you've printed this out to make notes when you're doing your first read through of the book, which I highly recommend, you can literally check these things off as you get through them every week. These are live checklists, and you can use them as such. The authors can as well, so you can always do a compare and contrast each week with your author for what they think they finished versus what you know or hope that they have finished in the intervening week. So, first thing you'll notice is that in week 1, you have story beats, hooks, and save the cat outlines for your for your fiction and creative nonfiction checklist. And so with that, again, you'll see a difference. And one of the other differences you're going to see is there are teaching elements and notes to you, the editor, inside these checklists for each week. So you're not having to run around trying to remember, wait, when they talked about Save the Cat outlines, is that when they talked about story beats, or was that a different week, or when should I put that together? All of that information we've tried to include on the checklist for you so you're not running around all over the place. Now you'll notice the other thing to notice is the fiction and the nonfiction are in fact different. So do be sure that when you're working with your author, you're pulling from the right revisions checklist, because the fiction starts with story beats, hooks, and save the cat outlines. Nonfiction starts with hooks and chapter structures. Now, I know that these are big things, and as we go through the first couple of weeks here, there might be that kind of fluttery, that nervous drop to your stomach when you realize that these are big weeks. These are weeks in which the authors are being asked, along with you, to conquer a lot of the heaviest items on the revision checklist and in any revision of any book. And that's absolutely true. They are the biggest weeks. And as we progress through this, I hope that you will see and start to understand that we've built it so that the lightest weeks come at the end so that they have time to do additional work and cleanup, to finish up any revisions that haven't been addressed up to that point, and to answer any additional beta feedback or other things that might crop up over this 8-week period. So, on to week 2. Week 2, chapter components, character sketches, because and therefore in storytelling. And you'll see that, again, the editor's version is substantially different with different things for you, as well as different teaching and different things that you can address along each line. Now, these are parallel. They are in order. So your teaching is going to match up with the same checklist that they have on their side. So the writers are going to have the same things in the same order. You're just going to have more information to help them, to share with them, to help get them on the right track. Now, the thing to keep in mind, of course, is they may already know some of these things. You may be able to breeze through some of these things. If their chapters are well structured, if they're in nonfiction, or if their outline is great and their story is actually coming together pretty well, and there's other things they need to focus on, move on. You can go on and say, you know what, your story's good, everything's good, but your characters and character arcs are awesome. Move on to week 3. Take that time. Give them that extra time to focus on the biggest problems within their novels. Same thing for nonfiction. If you notice on week 2, nonfiction is actually chapter components as well as because and how it is used in nonfiction. So chapter components, again, most of your writers, they're coming through book creators, CI, or the Thought Leadership Program, are going to be very, very familiar with chapter components, and you're not going to have to introduce them as a review tool. They're going to be expecting to receive some additional feedback from you on missing chapter components as identified by either their DE, their SE, or you in your review. So you should be set to go there. But for unsolicited authors, this is going to be a whole new experience for them. You may need to take a few minutes during your call to introduce the chapter components you'll be using, whether fiction or nonfiction, creative nonfiction or poetry, and then taking them through those components to help them understand that when you're reviewing to the components, this is what you mean. This is what you're helping them try to get to in their revisions. That way, it's not this is a list of everything I did wrong. Nope, it sure isn't. It's a list of everything that you did right and what we need to improve on. So, week 2, chapter components, because and nonfiction. So we'll go down to week 3 so we can see all 3 again. Here, oops. Week 3, characters, character arcs, and chapters continued. Week 3 for nonfiction is citations. So once we've introduced new information or started rearranging information with chapter components, we want to get the citation guide out in front of them as quickly as possible so that they're working on those citations, and as they're adding more information in their revisions, they have time to do their citations properly, because what we don't want are any more books going to copy editing missing their indexes. It slows everything down and causes a lot of problems. So the sooner we get them started on citations, and citations being good and correct, the better off everybody's going to be. Trust me. It's true. We're all going to be better off. All right, point of view. Again, a heavy week for fiction and creative nonfiction. It is less of an issue with nonfiction, true nonfiction, so we've actually pushed it down a little bit. In week 4, for nonfiction, you're working on dialogue and logical fallacies. Again, you want to make sure their arguments are strong and correct, and identifying those earlier in the process and really having them focus on key arguments that may not be getting their message or their lesson across properly, or may actually be failing them and getting them corrected, is going to be a huge help to the book overall. And so finding those key arguments within each chapter and having them focus specifically on those will really help build up the book, while at the same time reminding them that last week we did all those citations. You have to add citations to this too. All right. And then in week 5, we move to pace, POV, word blocks versus white space, and passive voice in nonfiction. And we do that because in general, not for everyone, but in general, for nonfiction, especially our business books, these aren't going to be the same kind of huge issues. The POV is generally going to be very clear. The pace, word blocks, white space, those are going to be bigger issues, and passive voice is going to creep up here and there. So those will need to be addressed, but it should be a somewhat lighter week for the nonfiction people to be able to address this, as well as any outstanding revisions from prior weeks. Whereas in creative nonfiction, we get into pace, word blocks versus white space, and passive voice. And this is really the first time they start to kind of match between fiction and nonfiction. But it is still going to be, for fiction, this is just going to be a heavier lift for a lot of our fiction writers. I know it's going to be a lot. We're going to have to do the best we can. And in truth, let's be honest, we're not going to be able to fix everything. That is the first thing that we have to kind of address when it comes to, especially passive voice creeping back in as further revisions are done. But if we can address the key moments where passive voice or pace or word blocks or white space are slowing down or killing the pace of the book or otherwise derailing the plot, those are going to be huge uplifts for fiction authors. And if we can find a couple of those in each chapter and get them fixed every time, it's going to really help. We also, there it is. We also provide the authors with a list of commonly used passive words and phrases so that they can go out and do a search themselves before or after the call with you to try to eliminate even more of those. And the more of those we can eliminate, we all know the better it will be. But if we can get the key ones down, that's really going to help the pace of the books. Week 6, show versus tell. Show versus tell, again, on nonfiction all across the board. Again, with our fiction authors, it is going to be a slightly heavier lift. But again, we've provided a list of words for them to literally go in, look for these show words. These are going to be your clues to where show is occurring. And show versus tell, those are also provided for the nonfiction writers. But again, for them, this should be a slightly lighter week where they can go back and complete more of the incomplete revisions from prior weeks. For creative nonfiction, this is actually very important because we do have a lot of our creative nonfiction authors who are telling their own stories or a very important story to them for the first time, and they really get confused versus moments when it is appropriate to show those emotional impact moments versus tell high action moments where letting everybody know how you felt emotionally in the moment actually kills the pace. So do keep those things in mind. I know this is a lot, but we can do this. I have faith. All right, so week 7, dialogue and logical fallacies, and this is where it starts to get lighter for fiction. Dialogue should have been addressed as part of the other revisions. So you're kind of coming back to it in a different way to get that second wave, that second chance to really clean up the pace. And that's how it kind of dovetails together. You're going to be really working on the dialogue to literally clean up the things that are killing the pace. Big chunks of dialogue where everybody's greeting everybody, and why? They all know each other. Why do you walk into a room and say, "Hello, my partner, I am so glad you are here," when they've been there for 20 minutes and you've already no, nobody does that. So cutting out all of those pace killers that happen to be in dialogue, this literally is a second week to really kind of dig into pace and have a second shot at getting even more revisions done to help move that along. Logical fallacies, that is quite a bit rarer in a lot of the fiction that we have. Rare, does happen, but it is rarer. It is something more to look out for in your creative nonfiction and, of course, nonfiction. Which is why in nonfiction it is much higher and it's much earlier in the revision process than it is in creative nonfiction or fiction. Then week 8, your final week, you made it, time for manuscript polish. If you notice in week 7 for the nonfiction authors, that actually starts happening then. Again, this is a slower week going into copy edit. And the reason for that is if they can get these things done, that is amazing. But if there's something that they need to, if you can't do a complete search and destroy on all the cliches, if there are other things, this is the week where it would be great to have it. It's fantastic if the author is willing to go out there, do it, eliminate these cliches and these unnecessary adjectives and adverbs, and really clean up their language. But if they are really pressed for time and they have heavy revisions they still not completed, this is the week that they can do that. So there's a reason it's like this. And I hope that helps and kind of helps make more sense of it. Let's see. And the same thing in nonfiction. Time for some final polish. Super light week. Again, it is also time for any deep or unaddressed revisions. Now, in this, you'll notice that there is not a specific week dedicated to integrating beta reader feedback. And part of that is because we can't guarantee when or if a reader is necessarily going to get their beta reader feedback on time. We also can't guarantee that it's going to be worth anything. A lot of times it is, but we have all also seen the very weird or strange beta reader feedback that's about not liking somebody's sweater in the author photo, or they didn't like them in high school and can't believe that they would dare write a book, or all kinds of things that have nothing to do with the writing itself. And so once it's been determined that they have beta reader feedback and that it is actually relevant to the book, we'll work that into the schedule when it arrives. But what I don't want is to set a week aside for something that for some writers they may not actually get back, and for some writers, and I'm saying some a lot, but we do have some writers who choose not to solicit beta reader feedback. And so not tying a whole week up in revisions waiting for something that writer didn't actually solicit frees you up to use it in a way that can really move their manuscript forward. I know that there are going to be a lot of questions and that there's going to be some concerns, and I completely understand that. So if you have any questions at all, or you need more information, or you just kind of want to chat about it or talk things out, please feel free to reach out to Christy Carter, reach out to me, ChandaElaine Spurlock, head of editing for Manuscripts LLC, to Sherman Morrison, Jordan Waterwash, or Mike Bailey. Any one of them will be happy to answer your questions and get back to you with information as quickly as possible. I hope all of you are safe and well and have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you so much. Bye.